So before we start, I do have a second channel. So if you are interested in more content that isn't related to anime and manga, consider going over there and subscribing. Also, if you end up enjoying this video, consider leaving a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. So recently I talked about Tokyo Ghoul, reminiscing on it, reflecting upon it, and just indulging within the nostalgia. But today I wanted to talk specifically about a character, one that is arguably the most powerful, important, and memorable from the whole series. And that is none other than, of course, our lovable main character, Kaneki. I think for a lot of people, Kaneki is very close to being a perfect character. Someone that has so many different points of evolution, constantly changing and trying to keep up with this ever-evolving world that's surrounding him. The altercations that he gets within, the mindsets, the emotion, everything felt so authentic. It felt real. You could relate to massive aspects of Kaneki's life or how he felt, the mindset that he put himself in. Obviously, because of this, a majority of things rotated around him, which makes the indulgence of his character and how it progresses throughout the entirety of the story all the more brilliant, all the more beautiful, all the more enjoyable. So I say let's unravel a little bit more of Kaneki to see what truly lies underneath. Let's begin. So one of the most influential things that comes with Kaneki's character is actually his introduction. This is one of my favorite, character moments for Kaneki as an individual. And don't get me wrong, there is a lot of different alterations for it, but for me, this one feels the most genuine, the most authentic, the one that has so much confliction, mental kind of turmoil swirling around within it. You get introduced to a young man that is very shy, someone that is timid, someone that is very reclusive towards the world and kind of just goes with the flow of things. He doesn't speak out all too often, he keeps to himself, and he only really has one true friendship that he considers worthwhile. Side note, a couple of things to note from this friendship, super valuable, super important. Probably the most lengthiest thing that gets kind of played upon throughout the entirety of Tokyo Ghoul's universe. Another thing is that the way Kaneki somewhat upholds himself reflects a very odd past or history that you don't really know all too much about. You can somewhat guess it, you can somewhat think about it or picture it within your head, but you never get any sort of clarification. And it's one that isn't healthy, one that isn't good. Obviously, this, in retrospect, seems really simplistic, right? There's nothing all too crazy about it. It's a pretty standard approach to a character introduction, but it just feels genuine. It feels nice. And I think that's kind of the whole point. You're seeing a character that is no different to any other person, that has their own trials and tribulations that they're going through and has already potentially gone through, to then get forced into a position that is even worse, forced into a world that isn't theirs. The Ghoul transformation is where a lot of Kaneki's personality, his past, his kind of inner trauma, inner demons, inner depression, inner emotions, pretty much everything comes out to play. And you see it with full frontal force. It is not shied away upon. It is not hidden within a corner. It's not something that you have to seek. You see every version, iteration of it in its fullest form. This would be Kaneki and Tokyo Ghoul's biggest weapon, putting its characters' emotions and their mental states out on a silver platter for you to witness. This would go hand in hand with the abilities that come across, with aggressiveness that comes with being a ghoul and what that actually entails, what that means, how much strength you have to have. The world that you get thrown into is not an easy one, so Kaneki has to survive, he has to kind of push himself forward, and there is times where he wanted to give up. There's times where he wanted to take his own life, because being a ghoul is not for the weak-hearted. He would find solace and comfort and friendship, even companionship, with people that are willing to give him a chance, with Enteku. And I think what's important about this is stuff that Kaneki has never had before. Even though the situation, his lifestyle, his personality, himself is completely different to what he was prior, he has still never truly had any of this. He's had one friend prior, one genuine friend. Hide. But you notice as soon as he gets kind of pushed into this lifestyle, diving into it headfirst from a massive cliff, the only thing that connects him to his human self is Hide. Hide being this symbol of his humanity, symbol of his previous life, what he was prior. And this is important to recognize because their dynamic, their relationship, as much as it's not on the screen shown to you, as much as it's not the most visually kind of aiding storytelling, it's one that lurks within the background. It's one that is valuable. You understand that it's valuable, but you don't need it constantly reinforced 24/7, which is a great thing. Because of this, their relationship blooms, it flourishes, it becomes kind of like a beating heart that you can somewhat fall back into when Kaneki may get a little bit weird. He can find comfort within that friendship. However, when you're reading the story, you notice that this is not going to end well, because as Kaneki progresses further into the Ghoul world, further into his character, further into his emotions, his humanity starts to slip away bit by bit. And the picture that is Hide, his best friend, his link to his human or his previous self, slowly starts to fade away. Very sad. I honestly really love this downward spiral into insanity. Kind of just a beautiful reflection of the world that Kaneki is within. He's still new to everything. He's still learning to understand himself, his newfound abilities, but also the mental state that is influenced by these newfound abilities and a reflection of it as well. You have people trying to kill him on a daily basis. You have other ghouls trying to protect their own territory, to fight for food and kind of not give in to this cannibalistic urge to eat or kill humans. It's kind of sad or even tragic to say, but Kaneki's willingness to adapt to the Ghoul world is 10 times, if not 100 times more proficient than he was within the human world. He's been forced to an extreme and he knows that it's very difficult to take his own life, yet the hardships that he has faced very early within Tokyo Ghoul's story is probably 1,000,000 times more painful and or difficult than when it was in the human, yet he still prevails. He still pushes forward. And this becomes kind of like a big motivation for himself. Not only does it become a phrasing for his character and one that's rather iconic to himself to continue moving forward or to keep pushing forward like a centipede, he's very stubborn. He does not realistically give up, and when he does start to go through this evolutionary process, when he starts to accept himself and what he has become, things start to change very drastically. And I think that scene with him accepting his ghoul self is honestly the most impactful throughout the whole story, because you get something that mirrors it pretty much right at the end of Tokyo Ghoul Read. The final moments within the whole series links back to his very first moments of accepting his ghoul self, accepting the Rize part of himself. And with this comes an evolution or a side of him that you would never really expect from a very shy and timid character. This person is now monstrous. This person is now vicious and dangerous and very hollowed out and does not show emotions easily. Any sort of trauma or negative past experiences spills out into his character, but no longer has this hold over him. Once again, it's incredible to witness. Seeing him accept himself and change and understand that his mentality is evolving to something else is a scary thing, but so incredibly gorgeous in design. And then his abilities obviously reflecting that, the grotesque Kaganes or Kagages that come out to play, especially when you move on towards the ending of Tokyo Ghoul. The Tokyo Ghoul's ending is a prime example of a character that has been pushed to their limit. A person that has changed so much in such a short amount of time that they are losing sight of themselves. They are losing control. And of course, the one person that comes into the picture to help bring him some sort of clarity, or at least try to, is Hide, the person that was non-existent throughout the majority of this story. Like, you barely seen anything of him and he was kind of lurking within the background. This is Kaneki's human side. So when Kaneki's going through his hardest period of his life, his final moments where he swims or sinks, Hide appears. This beaming light of humanity that connects Kaneki to his past self. Unfortunately, within the mindset that Kaneki was within, the half Kagura that was exploding out of control and showcasing the absurdity that Kaneki's mind was going through, there was no clear distinction of anything. within those moments, the only clarity that Kaneki had, I would like to believe, was Hide, because Hide was vibrant, he was bright, he was miraculous. But if you were to flip over to Kaneki's mind and view it from a third person perspective, it was unshackled. It was every sort of restriction or rule or construct has now been broken and fractured and splattered everywhere, with no control, no consistency, nor any coherency. It was unsalvageable. And you can see that within the half Kagacha, within Kaneki's desperation, within the very small moments between Hide and himself. There is moments where Hide actually gets through to him. Reflecting back on it is honestly pretty difficult because the emotion that they share within that very intimate moment is so personal. Barely any words have to be exchanged. Hide knows what he's doing and what he's trying to do, and Kaneki's struggling so desperately to hang on. Sue Ishida, the author, had the audacity to end the story right here. Now, he didn't end the story, from what I remember, in a normal way that you would think. When you think of a successful weekly series ending, you think of the warning that they give you. The series is entering its final arc, its final act, its final chapters. There is 5 chapters remaining. There is 2 chapters remaining. This is the final chapter. Normally, you would expect that. Some sort of clarification or promotion just to hype everything up, right? Ishida didn't do this. If anything, Ishida used it very purposefully with the intent to break his readers, to make them unknown, to keep them within the dark just like Kaneki was. And he ended the story on one of the most climatic cliffhangers that you can imagine. And he'd done this often throughout the story, throughout the weekly reading experience, which obviously made it absolutely incredible to ingest, but he left the finale of the story on a cliffhanger. You did not know what happened with Kaneki. You did not know what happened with Hide. You did not know what happened with Arima, nor the whole situation in itself. All you know is that Kaneki disappeared. That something happened with Hide in that altercation. Something happened with Arima, which is much bigger than we would ever expect. And it was a deathly situation. You could only think of the worst possible outcome. But it came out of nowhere. Imagine reading that weekly and being so absorbed into these chapters, absorbed into these characters like Kaneki, and then it just ends. Out of nowhere. No explanation, no warning whatsoever. It was brilliant on Ishida's behalf, and I'm kind of glad that he did do it. Tokyo Ghoul Re for me is where Kaneki gets more logical in a sense. And it's not to devalue the previous version, but if I were to put them side by side, I would say Tokyo Ghoul is the best example of Kaneki's emotional journey. One that is filled to the brim with so much confliction and despair and tragedy. Whereas part 2 feels like more of the logistics, the different segments of Kaneki's mentality trying to piece themselves back together. So you get to see pretty much everything that Kaneki went through in a more evolved type of way, but one that is progressively growing and changing with the world surrounding him. A great example of this is Hayase, Kaneki's new personality. This is genuine. Hayase isn't just a cover for Kaneki, this is someone that he thinks he is. A different person, a different individual, someone that is now a CCG investigator. So you get a completely different perspective, a different side to the story, something that is honestly a little bit more human but still null of that emotion. Kaneki has grown, but where he sits mentally, emotionally, even spiritually is unclear. You don't know what happened at the ending, you don't know where it went and how it unfolded, but you know something is there. What I really love about Tokyo Ghoul Re is that because we've had so much attention to Kaneki, it actually spreads to other characters. A lot of other individuals have a lot more of a valuable spotlight than Kaneki does at the beginning. Don't get me wrong, he still steals the spotlight, but a lot of the characters rival him in that approach. Mitsuki from Tokyo Ghoul Re is arguably one of my favorite characters throughout the story because they are very complex, they are very broken, they are very tragic, and the amount of conflict that they face within themselves, their emotions, their questioning of sexuality, their history, their identity, their core identity, I should say, is all over the place. This isn't just a simple reflection of Kaneki. This isn't just a parallel of Kaneki. This is a new variation, a new evolution of it. This is someone's past and their trauma and their abuse conforming to their identity and controlling it and warping it into this malicious thing that is uncontrollable. And Matsuki becomes the most unpredictable character. You do not know how they are going to act or react or how things may come across to them. They make you nervous. nervous, they make you unsure. Having someone as much as an anomaly as Matsuki was elevates the story tenfold. And when you have Kaneki, now known as Hayase, trying to come to terms with himself and trying to understand his past and what he was prior, it's almost like a race against time. That at some point he will have to indulge within his previous self. He will awaken within himself and he will have to face a lot of the trauma that comes with it. He will have to face that ending. Will he be able to understand, comprehend, and to accept the things that he'd done? As emotionally fueled and directional Tokyo Ghoul was, you get some of the most emotional moments within Tokyo Ghoul Re. But the only reason they are so incredibly impactful is because of how much emphasis went into it within Tokyo Ghoul. I think every single Hide and Kaneki moment is beautiful, absolutely brilliant. Kaneki's stepping stones throughout Tokyo Ghoul Re, from Hayase to Black Rebirth to these kind of limbo periods in between, to the fracturing of his mind once again, and to the acceptance of what he truly is, becoming this massive dragon form that is just uncontrollable, unclustered. Seeing it reach its peak, seeing Kaneki reach a clarity and what he gets somewhat reborn back into, seeing him face Rize again and to accept her and to forgive her and to beg for forgiveness for himself. There is so many things that Kaneki's journey provides that just feels right. And even though it's very horror driven and obviously fantasy and filled with tragedy and despair, it feels genuine, it feels authentic. And I think people relate to him on that emotional level, how he feels about things, how he views things, how he changes, the experiences that he goes through, how that affects him. To be entirely honest, I think I could continue to sit here and talk about Kaneki for a very, very long time in a massive amount of differing detail. But for me, this is just the surface of what Kaneki is able to provide. What he does to the story, concept, the symbolism, the amount of inner emotion, the effect it has on other characters, the dynamics of Kaneki and other characters is honestly just brilliant. It's memorable. It's something that I don't think you can forget, and for a lot of you, Kaneki as a main character is someone that you will hold very close to your heart. He is memorable, he is valuable, he is all around kind of iconic. His growth, his development, his spiral into insanity, to his rebirth into clarity, into happiness, into beating his own tragedy. It's such a beautiful journey that he went through, and one that I feel like you cannot forget. The impression that he leaves on people, that he leaves on you as a reader, is unimaginable. And I, for one, couldn't be more grateful and thankful to Sue Ishida for creating such a magnificent character known as Ken Kaneki. Endtime. So welcome to the end of the video. If you have made it this far, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. But I would love to know how you feel about Kaneki as a character. Do you remember him? Could you never forget him? What are some of your favorite moments? Maybe it's Black Reaper, maybe it's the Dragon Kaneki, maybe it's early story, maybe it's the half Kagacha. There's so many different points of contact and variations of change and evolution for him as an individual, that everyone has their own perspective of what they value the most. What period of time, what period of emotion or mental state do you absolutely love? I'd love to hear your thoughts. But with that, I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Drink plenty of water, and I will see you within the next one. Goodbye.